Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Hi, and welcome to Making It, presented to you by Fireside. I'm your host, Terry Woolman, and my guest today is South African award-winning musician, Wouter Kellerman. I appreciate you joining us every week, and I'd like to share with you my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and with abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better chance of finding you when you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance, and don't forget to have fun along the way. Excuse me, I'm still recovering from being sick. If you're joining us in our live audience today, we'll be inviting questions and comments during the second half of the show. So make it count and simply request an invite to speak. And my moderator, Dr. Lisa, will bring you on stage to join the conversation. I want to say hi, Wouter. It's great to see you. And hi, Lisa. Nice to see you as well.
It's always good to be here. Good to see you too. And Wouter, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. Let me tell you about our guest today. Globe-trotting flautist and composer Wouter Kellerman received a Grammy Award for his album Winds of Samsara, followed up by his Grammy-nominated album Love Language. Kellerman thrives on experimenting with the shades, textures, and colors that his flute is capable of painting, creatively blending them with other instruments and voices. Over the course of 9 albums, he has built a career on the rigorous classical training of his youth to create a signature sound that has earned him critical praise and multiple awards globally. He has won a total of 8 SAMA Awards, the South African equivalent to the American GRAMMY, reinforcing his status as one of South Africa's foremost musicians. Passionate about teaching and empowering young people, Wouter has dedicated himself over the past 18 years to working with the SOS Children's Village in Ennerdale, South Africa. His latest album, Pangaea, is nominated for the current 2022 Grammy Awards in the Best New Age category. Wouter Kellerman, welcome to Making It.
Thank you so much, Terry. Very great talking to you. I'm very excited to have a beautiful talk.
Yeah, and we haven't seen each other for a few years. We've met actually in person, not just virtually, and we've been friends over the past few years across the globe. You're in the States right now, actually, for a pre-Grammy promotion and shooting some videos and doing all of the things that you do. You're in DC right now in Washington?
Yes, I'm in DC. Yeah.
How long are you here for?
Well, I've decided to stay until the Grammys because of all the COVID drama,
Right.
because I happened to be in Australia, where I spend quite a bit of my time because my kids are there.
Mm-hmm.
And
You have 2 kids, correct?
Yeah, I have two kids, and they're grown up already. And but it was really hard to get out of Australia to get into the US. They actually to leave Australia you need an exit visa.
I love how Australia and New Zealand also are handling COVID. They're doing it with a lot of wisdom, I think.
Yeah, but they were a bit over the top because
Okay.
I'm not a citizen.
Right.
I'm not an Australian citizen, and I had a big show coming up in Dubai, and at the Dubai Expo in October,
Right.
October last year, and the South African government booked me to perform at the expo. There's 190 countries exhibiting there, and they wanted me to open Heritage Week. So it was a huge opportunity, especially in the light of the pandemic drought of performances. And so I had to get an exit visa to leave Australia. And I put all the paperwork in and they denied it. Even though I'm not even a citizen, they told me good opportunities overseas is not a good enough reason to leave Australia.
Wow.
So that was
okay.
That was pretty shocking. That was over the top. So
especially because you're vaccinated, right?
Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I was also planning to stay away for. I was planning to come back to Australia, but only in the following year. So I was planning to stay away for 6 months and then go back to Australia. But so I think that was. I mean, that's like North Korea. They won't let you leave.
Yeah. Never mind not letting you in. Yeah. Not letting you leave.
Yeah. That's over the top. So I didn't want to go back to Australia because I was worried I wouldn't be able to get out again to come to the Grammys. And at the time, the US borders to South Africa were closed because, you know, the new Omicron virus was initially detected in South Africa, so the US closed its borders to South Africa. So I was worried if I went back to South Africa, I wouldn't be able to get back into the US to come to the Grammys. So I ended up just staying here in the US, and it's been pretty good because the US is pretty open and things are happening, and so I'm grateful for that and having opportunity to do things.
Let me start off our conversation by saying congratulations on your Grammy nomination. That's so fantastic. You're in great company. Our friend Ricky Kesh, who is a collaborator of yours as well, is also in the same category again this year. But I'm just so thrilled for you. It was such a pleasure to vote for you, you know, to support you, and see you once again, you know, on the Grammy ballot. It's just fantastic. You must be thrilled.
Thank you. Yeah, we are so excited about this because, you know, we created this album during the lockdown times, and I happened to be in Australia, and there was an extremely severe lockdown where you were only allowed to leave your house for 1 hour a day, and in that hour you were only allowed 3 miles from your house. They patrolled the roads, and if you're more than 3 miles from your house, then you were fined more than $1,000. Wow. But anyway, so I was stuck in my house for 23 hours a day for a total of nearly 9 months. And so the music was like a fantastic outlet in that time. So David Arkenstone, my collaborator on this album, we started making this music, and it was just such a beautiful process. And the lovely thing is that neither of us were traveling, so we had more time than we would usually have to really focus and really get into it. And but, you know, making music kind of in the isolation of your house and not testing it on audiences, where, you know, makes you a little bit concerned that will it reach the audience? Will people appreciate it? And to hear that they are appreciating, and especially my peers are appreciating it, is just such a beautiful feeling, and I'm very grateful.
Do you usually road test your music before you record it and release it?
I think like everybody, your first album is very road tested. You know, and that's why that's why people's first albums are so good usually. Like Nora Jones, for example. You know, her first album is so exquisitely beautiful, and I don't think she's quite reached that same level again. And I think the problem is that you road test your first album thoroughly, and you take feedback from people and from how it works, and then after that, it becomes a kind of a deadline kind of thing. You know, it's time to release something again. And before you can road test it properly, you have to put it out. So so I try and road test it, but it's not as road tested as I would love it to be.
Especially when you're doing a global collaboration, which we've all been doing over the last 2
Yeah,
years. I've been finishing
yeah.
up my record, but with collaborations around the world, same thing, and it's a
Mm,
weird bubble. You know,
yeah,
it's very um, we're very isolated, but it's extremely connected and intimate because we're
yeah,
kind of forced to really communicate with each other, when we're doing something and
yeah.
not able to be in the room together. So I think there's some exquisite music coming out of the pandemic, and your album with David Arkenstone is a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, thank you. That I think it's you. I mean, I think you, as a musician, you trust your intuition when you do these things from in a distance and collaborating over the oceans and not being able to road test it. You trust your intuition, and
Hmm.
hopefully, years of working in the industry has honed your intuition to some extent.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell the story of the meaning of your album title? Because it's a
Yeah,
great. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Pangaea is the name of the supercontinent that existed before it split up divided up to create the present continents. So the theme of the music is to be united and to be together rather than in these present divided times. We live in a time of extreme division and kind of a nationalistic fervor, and and it kind of seems like the ideas of love and caring and compassion are slowly being eroded over time. And this is the music calls for a return to those values, and that's basically, I mean, that's also kind of my life's work, is to call for more love and more compassion and more tolerance.
And that's a global perspective that you're sharing here. That's not just a reflection
Yeah,
of America
Hmm.
or even living
exactly.
in South Africa, where
Yeah,
there's challenges there as well. But
yeah,
it has escalated globally. I agree.
yeah, no,
And
definitely. And then, I mean, I've seen it everywhere, but I think it's been particularly apparent in the US over the
mhm.
last years that
Yeah, we seem to have mastered
the,
it.
yeah, there really is an air of division and none of tolerance, and so
Oh, the things that
um,
we win at.
Right. Yeah, that's not what I was going for. Uh, Wouter, because you're speaking of this, I have a quote of yours that I would like to share because it to me sets the intention of our conversation today. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to share that. And these are your words. My main personal goal is to live a loving life. And there's so much to appreciate and enjoy that one tends to forget while on the treadmill. So it's something I have to stop and remind myself every now and then. I just want to create beautiful music. That is what keeps me going every day. And if I get to spread some love across the world, that's a bonus.
yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
mission statement. And in honor of that, I'm drinking my throat coat tea that says choose love.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
So,
that's beautiful. That's
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, you
So,
know that the message of love is so cliched, but it doesn't make it less true.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it really is. It really, to be caring and loving, I mean, I think makes the world a better place and makes you happier as well. It just makes everything smoother and easier and more pleasant. And so I really think that's a good way to go.
Is that how you were brought up, or is that something that would you feel you were born that way? I mean, I share that. I
Um,
know Lisa does as well. Or were you taught that in your
yeah,
family?
there was a lot of love in my family, and it's quite interesting. I grew up in a very conservative South Africa, and my parents were very unique in being atheists.
Oh,
But they sent us to church. My dad insisted that we go to church to learn the values
oh,
of the church, which he believed were good. And so we actually grew up very religious, the kids, and the whole idea of love and caring, in the church, is an idea that stayed with me, combined with how my family. I mean, we're a very close knit family, and we're all very loving, and we get along beautifully well.
mm-hmm.
And I think those two influences really settled, and confirmed the idea of love.
Well, that in a way that speaks to how you ended up becoming a father at a young age as well. I could see, because you had good role models. How old were you when you had your first kid? You've got two grown kids.
Yeah. So I actually, when I left, the story goes like this: when I left school, I wanted to study music, but I didn't have money. My parents didn't have money, so I couldn't go to university. I had to get a scholarship to study, and I was offered a scholarship in engineering.
Electrical engineering, right?
Yeah, my other talent is maths, which I also enjoy, but I'm not as passionate about than music. So I studied engineering and still carried on my music. I even tried to study both in parallel, 2 parallel degrees. And then I met my future wife at university, and straight after university, we had our first child. I was 23 when my first child was born, and I had just finished my degree, and had to work back for the engineering company that sponsored me for 2 years. And I decided I'll work back for them and then continue my musical career. And when I tried to continue my musical career, I ran out of money very quickly. And things were already quite expensive. And
that's not a unique story, by the way, but yes.
Yeah. So I went back to engineering, and I started my own company in order to have time to play music and to spend with the kids. Because we had a second child soon after. But I think partly because we were married so young, the marriage didn't last very long, and I ended up. My ex-wife is a beautiful person, but very spontaneous and not very responsible, and I was the responsible one. So I got custody over the kids. So I was in this situation where I had to spend a lot of time taking care of the kids and run my engineering company. And wanting to be a musician.
So it's still finding time to practice and compose and perform.
Yeah. So that running my own company did allow me to spend that time, to still be busy with music. But every 2 or 3 years, I would actually try and make that conversion to being a full-time musician. And run out of money and come back to engineering. And that carried on for about 20 years.
And in that time, how did you manage to stay lifted, to not feel defeated?
Well, I actually went overseas every year to do master classes. At the time, I was playing mostly classical music. Well,
right.
Only classical music, because I grew up playing, learning in the classical way.
Well, let's go back. You started playing flute at the age of 10, and then you appeared as a soloist with the Johannesburg Symphony Orchestra when you were quite young.
Yeah, when I was about 19, I was studying engineering at university when they invited me to perform with the Johannesburg Symphony Orchestra. But yeah, I basically, when I was a little boy, there was only classical music in my house,
Right.
But the lady who looked after me when my mom went off to work in the mornings played only African music the whole morning long. So I was influenced by all the African music from a very young age. But when I started playing the flute, that was on the classical road, the scales and the tone and everything, which I loved. And so I you learn to read and you don't improvise. That's kind of the classical way.
Yes.
And so I learned that like that, and I carried on in playing classical music all those years.
Were you also, sorry to interrupt, but I'm so curious, were you also learning piccolo and alto flute and bass flute and all the beautiful instruments that you play, or was that later on as you became an artist and improviser? Okay.
Yeah, that came later. I only played the normal
C flute.
Traditional. Yeah, and so basically, while I was doing engineering, I would go overseas and learn from the best flute players in the world. I would allow myself 3 weeks away from home, and go and do beautiful master classes with some of the teachers that I admired. And so that kept me going, and I still had chamber music concert, all classical music. And then finally, when my daughter left university and my son left school, things got a whole lot cheaper. And
yeah, they eat a lot of food, don't they? Those kids and their friends.
Yeah. And and I tried to make that conversion again. And this time, it was 2005, 2006. I finally could sustainably make music my life. And people thought I was crazy because I was already in my mid-40s.
Right.
And I was leaving a successful engineering career to do music. And I wasn't as sexy as I once had been.
Some people might beg to differ.
So people,
for those who are just listening and not watching, Wouter's a good-looking guy. You're a good-looking guy.
No, I never thought of myself as good-looking, but now looking back, I was very much better looking then than I am now.
As was I.
So
I can relate.
Yeah, so people thought I was crazy to make that conversion, and I just I started improvising. My yoga teacher at the time was also a guitarist, and we both clueless on improvising. So we felt comfortable in each other's company. So we would do yoga, and then we'd spend a few hours just randomly playing anything that came into our heads, and just improvising anything, and
in a safe space. Yes.
In a safe
no judgment.
Space, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, because we were both shocking, and so slowly, and even if you just play random things, every now and then something nice randomly appears, and then we would record that little idea and move on and build on it. And after about a year of that, meeting twice a week, we had enough to release my first album.
And which year was that?
That was 2007. 2007.
So that was your color album.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So, and in that same time, what I did as well, because I'd never used microphones before, being a classical musician.
Right.
So I went to a singer that I admired, that I loved, and I offered my services to her free of charge. And I said, well, I'll tour with you. She was a very well-known pop singer in South Africa called Nia Nell. And I said to her, I'll perform with you for free. I just want to learn, And she said, okay, come to my house. And we played a little bit, and she liked what I was doing. So I kind of, then I was kind of her touring group, and I performed for about 2 years with her, and just learning to like how to use the stage, how to use the mic, how to use the monitors. I got myself some in-ear monitors at the time as well, and kind of figuring out how all of that works.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was also kind of figuring out how to record the flute, because I went to many different kind of studios, and I was always disappointed what the flute sounded like being recorded. And and the one time someone asked me to come play on a movie soundtrack, and when I listened back, the flute sounded beautiful. And being an engineer already, I said to him, would you mind if I make a note of your equipment? So I wrote down all his equipment, the whole signal chain, and also all the settings.
Right.
So my manager, Tulsi Pillay, happened to be in New York at the time. So I phoned her. I said, bring back this and this and this and this. The preamp and the mic is mainly the secret.
Sure.
Secret sauce. And that's basically, I've kind of been basing my recorded sound on that since then, with some tweaks.
Mm-hmm. I've done the same. Anytime somebody put a mic in front of my guitar, and when it sounded incredible, I would make note. I would ask the questions. I went out and bought a mic that somebody put in front of me at Capitol Studios because my classical guitar had never sounded like that before, and that's part of my sound now.
That's the obvious thing to do, and I believe a musician, us musicians, should take responsibility of our. A lot of musicians go as a kind of a mystical space that they can't affect or get involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Especially a lot of classical musicians. They don't ever query or question the engineers or try and figure out what works best. And I think that's part of your role, is to make sure that you not only play well, but that it translates and that it actually gets to the listener.
Right. Just like you did your due diligence in learning the art of performing.
Exactly.
how to translate from a small, intimate chamber orchestra setting to a rock concert. Playing in front of thousands of people. How to insert yourself into that experience and bring everything to it. By the way, you mentioned your manager Tulsi. So how did you find you've been together a long time with her. How did you find her, and help? It seems like then you've you've crafted this beautiful career for yourself with her.
That's actually a very interesting story. Tulsi was a friend, the best friend of my ex-girlfriend. So we eventually split up, my girlfriend and I, and Tulsi.
And you got custody of Tulsi. That's good. That worked out.
Kind of.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
I'm stealing that. I am so stealing that. And it's happened to me before. This is
okay,
wonderful.
Lisa. Right. You know what I'm talking about.
So what happened here? We kind of stayed friends, and one day she came over, and I had a problem with my French visa because I was going to go to France for music master classes, and it was too late. I'd arranged my visa too late, and I had a lady working for me, kind of a secretary, and she had gone to the French embassy, and she wasn't able to expedite it. So Tulsi happened to visit for a cup of coffee, and she said, let me have a try at it. So I said, okay. So she took all the paperwork, and she came back. Not only was the visa valid, but she arranged me a 5-year visa, which at that stage was an impossible thing to get. You normally get like a month or two. And so I said to her, you should really come and work for me. I was so impressed with her. And she happened to be quite tired of her corporate job, and she took a sabbatical. And I actually recommended that she doesn't stop working, that she just works part-time to start with, but she was keen to start, and she took a sabbatical. And neither of us knew much about the music industry, really, so we just kind of figured it out from there. And
You more than kind of figured it out. I mean, you've had multiple Grammy nominations and SAMA awards and global recognition. So bravo to the two of you.
I think maybe it helped that we didn't know anything,
right?
Because we didn't have any any limits. We kind of just. I remember when I said to my kids, I'm going to do this music thing full time now. We're sitting around the kitchen table, and they said to me, "So what would you like to achieve? What are you going for?" And I said, "Well, the first thing is I want to play with the singer Nionel. That was in South Africa. Then my dream would be to play at a huge event like the Rugby or Soccer World Cup, for South Africa. And then a Grammy nomination would be beyond my dreams. And the goal was I would love to do a duet with Norah Jones." And
did that happen as well?
No, that's the only one that hasn't happened
yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we just put it out there, and it was kind of a bit ridiculous to have such lofty goals at the time,
I suppose. But yes, but it's it's best not to know.
Yeah, we kind of just thought, well, we put it out there. We're going to try. I'm putting my life and my soul into this. I've waited 20 years to get to do this. So I was particularly, I worked myself to the bone. I've had like 3 vacations in the last 15 years, and I work weekends. I work every day, but I love to do it. So,
And by work, you mean not just practicing your multiple instruments, because you're multi-instrumentalist. That takes time. And composing and producing, arranging, all this collaborating, performing with other artists that you do, performing yourself, but handling your business, and continuing to learn your business.
Exactly. The music business these days, I think for most of us musicians, the days are over where you can just be a musician.
Right.
There are a few privileged people who can just play music and everything else takes care of itself. But for most of us, you have to take care of everything. I know how my band and I can set up our sound equipment. I've got my own sound set up. We can set it up in half an hour. We can. So I can do my own engineering. I do my own editing, and I do the social media and marketing.
Do you enjoy Do you enjoy that, or do you just embrace it because it's important and because that's a good way to approach things, is with an open heart and an open mind?
Yeah, I would rather be making music more.
Yeah,
I do enjoy the other parts, and because I've got a rational side of my and brain that I like to challenge. So I love strategizing. I love the puzzle.
I know, just even as a hobby, you really enjoy games and puzzles. So so that makes sense. Yeah.
So I love the puzzle of figuring out what to do, but I don't enjoy doing it so much. I'd rather not doing all the admin and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I think in any job, even in playing music, there are things you enjoy more than other things.
Sure.
So you might not necessarily enjoy doing all your scales every day, but you do them anyway.
Right,
So I
because you
kind
enjoy
of
the benefit that you reap.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually personally enjoy the scales, but I think in any job there's easier and difficult parts, and perseverance is essential, because if you in any job there's going to be difficult parts that you really don't want to do, even in music.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the perseverance and the grit to push through those moments, you just don't get where you want to go.
Well said. Yeah, one of the things that I'm a little surprised about, not the struggle, not what would seem obvious, not the, trying to be a full-time musician and going back to electronic engineering, and, because, we've had these conversations on this show over the last 5 years with over 200 people, around the world. And most of the people that I speak to, that's part of the journey. It's not just a straight shot to what you know them to be. But the thing that I'm kind of tickled by hearing and surprised, especially because you've got a big brain, you've got a science brain as well as, a musical heart. But the fact is that you grew up as a very disciplined classical flautist musician, with the best training. And then you've become basically what you do for a living is you improvise. I mean, you write great melodies and all that, but you were so known and at home for just being present and playing from your heart, and that's pretty magnificent that you, not every classical musician makes that transition with such, it appears to be
and
ease
actually,
and grace.
Yeah, it's not easy for me. It's not easy. I'm still more at home with reading than improvising.
Okay.
I'm still a much better reader.
Yeah.
And improvising is obviously, it's part of the creation process, and I love doing it, but it takes me a long time. I'm not really great at to sit in with a band with music that I'm not very familiar with.
Right.
Is something I'm completely uncomfortable with. I'll usually, I wouldn't be doing a very good job, but if I have time, and I can allow myself to fail many times and try and experiment, then eventually I can come up with something nice.
Right.
And that's something I still want to be, I'm still working on, and I still would love to work on, is to kind of improve my improvisational ability, so that I can just do it at the spur of the moment, anywhere, anytime. And that would give me a real kick to be able to do that. But I think the classical background and the way you started, I mean, you're kind of more comfortable because of that, because you just spent your whole growing up and your whole teaching process in that way. So, for example, if someone asks me to record and on a new song, if they want it to be done really quickly, send me the notes.
Oh yeah, write it down.
I can do it really quickly, but if they want me to create my own improvisational part, that always takes much longer.
I appreciate that you know your strengths, and you don't you're comfortable with that. I mean, and that's the beauty of age. I mean, I know my strengths as well as an artist and as a player, and what comes easy and what doesn't. So I think that comes with age and experience. Certainly for me.
Yeah, I definitely. I've always, also with producing, I can produce, but often I'm I need someone else, a different ear.
Yeah.
And when I have that, the album just turns out to be much better. So I tried to solo produce one album, and it's my least successful album. And so I agree with you. You must know your strengths and your weaknesses. And I'm very I love to use other people where I feel I'm not strong enough. I mean, I would just in engineering, but I do take a very active part in the producing and the engineering.
Right.
Like I can mix, but I'm not the best mixer. So I'll get someone who's one of the world's best.
Exactly.
You know, why
right.
not?
So,
get one of the world's best engineers, get some of the world's best producers, and I know I can play the flute well.
Right.
And I can play with beautiful colors, and that's kind of my thing. And if I combine my strengths with their strengths, then you're bound to get a good result.
Well, you get a great result. You know, that's what takes it from being, I say, great to making it incredible. You know, is surrounding yourself with greatness. You know, other people
and then,
that you're aligned with who are better at some of the things that you don't excel at.
Exactly. And the other thing that I found is that even though you're working with the world's best, don't be shy to tell them when you don't think it's good enough.
Right. Right. Because it's subjective. It's art. So the only one who really knows what it's supposed to sound like is you, the person who's the creator. And
exactly.
You can't be shy. You're doing yourself a great disservice if you don't, if you're too shy to say, I'm not sure that that's the direction I want to take something.
Yeah, because actually with my first album, we mixed it in South Africa with South Africa's best people, and I still wasn't quite happy. So I reached out to Husky Hoskins, and he mixed Nora Jones's big album.
Right.
And engineered her album. And I reached out to him out of the blue, and I sent him the music, and I said, would you mind mixing this? And and so he said yes. I was amazed. And so I came to LA, and we mixed together, and about half the album he did amazing work, and he solved all the problems that but for the other half that we had really mixed well up to then, and he couldn't. And he even said at the start, he says, these sound great. I'm not sure that I need to do anything. And it was very hard for me to be confident enough to say to him, yeah, this is nice, but I think we should try it like this or try it like that. But I just stuck to my guns. And even after that, you know, now when I'm working with engineers, I often drive them crazy. And I'm at the moment, I've been working with Bill Hare, the engineer out of San Francisco. He mixes the pentatonics, for example.
Oh, yeah. Good choice for you.
He's very patient with me, and I think I drove him crazy in the beginning. And I drive everybody crazy, but they usually want to work with me again because the result is good at the end. So, and he's very patient. He just lets me carry on and on and on, version 10 and version 11, and until I'm happy. And you know, it's beautiful to have people like that around you who understand you and know that you're a little bit obsessive and are able to live with it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good part. I think it's an important part of being an artist is to be obsessive, to keep it in perspective, but not to compromise. Not to compromise. Really, quite simply, we work too hard at what we do.
Exactly.
And the journey for most of us is filled with challenges and joy and disappointments and then more joy. And
Yeah.
hey, I want to talk about health because you mentioned yoga earlier, and I know
Yeah.
that that's a huge part of your life. Um, you're also you played table tennis. That's really something that you enjoy, and tennis as well. Dancing, salsa, tango, bachata, and South African gumboot dancing, which is
Yeah.
something you incorporate into your show as well. But
Yeah.
you're an avid practitioner of yoga. It's a big part of your practice.
Yeah.
When did all this start, and how does it play into your life?
Yeah, this started when I was approaching 40.
Yeah,
I had a
that's so interesting because I started karate martial arts training at 40.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're the same because I started Tai Chi and Kung Fu um, in my late 30s.
Hmm.
I've always been kind of active. We grew up playing sports, and but I got this kind of bit of a crisis when I turned, because I was approaching 40 and I haven't even started a musical career,
Hmm.
and and I just felt I haven't. I've got so much that I want to do, and I'm not getting there, and I just wanted to make sure that I'll be healthy for a long time. So I started doing Tai Chi first, and then I started doing Tai Chi and Kung Fu. But the Kung Fu, not any, I had to protect my lips and my fingers, so I just did the training without the combat. And then I moved over to yoga, and that's just kind of such a beautiful cross-training tool for everything else that you want to do. And if you spend hours a day in one position playing the flute or the guitar, like in your case, I mean, that kind of hunched over position is really unhealthy, and you could easily injure yourself unless you do some cross training. So it's always been important for me to do the cross training, and I kind of see it as essential for my career, because I just don't want to be injured, and I would love to be playing for a long time still. And so it's kind of just who I am. And so the health in general is just, I think, critical part of the puzzle.
Yeah, and in so many ways, the life that we live as artists, with traveling, with long hours, handling business, and uh, continuing to perfect and grow our craft and create. Uh, it's it's in some ways you have to train like an athlete trains in order to stay healthy. I can't
Exactly.
even envision doing what we do and not exercising and not doing breath work and
Mm.
getting up every hour to stretch or do some
Yeah,
push-ups or yeah.
exactly. I just had a look before pandemic times in before in the 10 years before the pandemic, I did 100 overseas trips. 100 overseas trips in 10 years. And all the jet lag, and these are not relaxed overseas trips. These are, you hit the, you land, and you know how it goes with when you're a musician. You never have finances to take a luxury. You hit the ground running.
Yes.
And I'm now looking back. I just don't know how I survived it. But I think the cross training was absolutely essential. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and now looking back, I'm just thinking, what was I thinking? Because that's overdoing it a bit. So I'm planning now to do much less. Do as much music, but not as much traveling.
Yeah.
But for a while, I just said yes to everything. Because I'd waited so long to do this. I just said yes to everything that came my way, basically.
Right. And
So,
then you just figure out how to make it work.
yeah, I'll just say yes. I'll fly across the world for one show, and then fly back. If there was an opportunity, I was just thinking, let me do it. And
Wow, I'll keep that in mind.
yeah.
Is that an offer? May take you up on that, Wouter.
I think
no. I applaud you. I applaud you for learning to say no. I think it's really healthy as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's something I'm learning now.
Yeah. Well, never too late on that. And and saying yes to everything is a very important part of having a career as well. We've all done
I think
that.
it's really, I think saying yes is more important than saying no, because especially if it's a fantastic opportunity, to recognize it and to make it happen, I think is, I can't resist it. If it's a fantastic opportunity,
Sure.
a beautiful opportunity, I'll just move the world to make it happen. And some people, will say, well, they'll consider their own comfort, maybe, and maybe that's good for them, and it's healthier, definitely, to take it easy. But I think sometimes it's good. Sometimes you need to, if there's a great opportunity, you need to be willing to get out of your comfort zone and somehow make it happen.
Absolutely.
But I've been doing that too much. So
okay. Well, I want to ask you about the art of collaboration, because it's something you really do a lot of, and I'm curious about your home recording setup, and just without geeking out too much, what that is. But before I do that, I just wanted to invite Lisa to, if anybody in our audience wants to join us, or Lisa, if you've got any questions, jump on in.
I'm looking to see if there's anyone in there. If you have a question, please raise your hand or type it in or request to be on the stage, and I will try to keep my eye out for you.
Thank you.
I am loving the saying yes, saying no thing. Because I look at it as, instead of saying no to someone else, you're saying yes to yourself. So how do you decide what's a yes to you and a no to someone else now that you're in this, I can say no when I think it benefits me phase?
Yeah, it's kind of, I've just turned 60, and for the first time I've got a sense of limited time. I've never thought about it before. Mm-hmm. And so I'm particularly trying to be healthy. And I think, Lisa, that's it's exactly like that. You say yes to yourself and no to someone else. And I'm actually struggling with something right now where someone sent me some songs to collaborate on, and I just don't have the time. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for me to say no, because they've done beautiful work, and so I'm, but I think actually that's a beautiful thing, Lisa, to put it in that perspective. Say yes to yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's actually very useful for me. Thank you.
I'm about to turn 62 every now and then. I have a burst of wiseness. That was it for this month.
That's so it. Well, that's a beautiful gem, because I just wrote that one down too.
Say yes
because
to
again,
yourself.
Well, right, because we think that it's one or the other, but you're still saying yes.
Yeah.
You're saying no is an act of saying yes. Just
it's a way to reframe it for yourself, to look at, exactly. I'm listening to Wouter say, the yoga and your physical health and your mental health and your own creativity. Mm. And it's a way of being able to say, thanks for this opportunity. And I know it will probably be phenomenal. And at the same time, my life right now won't allow me to do that.
Yeah.
Where I have some me priority stuff that is going to take precedent, but man, don't I wish I could do that.
Yeah. No, that's actually very true. And when it's a fantastic opportunity, you're saying yes to that person and to yourself, because it's really something you want to do. You know,
it's having those parameters of what your values are and what your mission is and your purpose. And you, Terry, read yours earlier. And so if it speaks to all of that and you can feasibly fit it in, then it's I read a book. Oh my God, McQueen, this year's book was Effortless. That one was Essentialism. It's called Essentialism. He says, if it's not an emphatic yes, it's a no. So if you're hemming and hawing, then it probably should be a no, and you just don't want to go there. But if it's not an emphatic yes, you need to figure out that this is probably a no. But I was just wondering, because with your engineer brain, I have a girlfriend who was a former engineer who's a coach, and I can tell when her engineer brain kicks in, because that's the one that checks boxes. But she lives from her gut now, and it's a whole different kind of dynamic. It's like, I could tell it's logical and it makes sense, but my gut is saying no.
Yeah, so actually this was quite interesting, because I just had a process like that, because it's this the show in Dubai that I spoke about, where I was booked by the South African government to perform there. They flew my band there, and they paid me very well. But I mean, it was just, I happened to be in Australia. That's a long way to fly for one show, you know. So my gut said no, even though I wanted to, you know, I'd love to do it. But if you think of the days of flying and effort for one show, but my brain told me this is a clear yes, because it's a huge opportunity, huge exposure. It's going to be lovely to see my band. It's going to be, we haven't played together for so long. So eventually I went with a yes in that case. And I'm very glad I did it.
Good.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So kind of sometimes your brain and your gut are in competition, and you kind of have to figure it out. It's not a very easy one. But at the moment, I have quite a few offers that I just can't fit in, and my brain and my gut both say no.
Right.
Well, that's a clear answer.
Those.
You're right.
Yeah, but it's quite hard, because it's still something I'd love to do, and it's from people that I love, and who are beautiful musicians, and I'd love to make them happy. You know, so it's going to be hard for me to say no to that.
I think your Dubai was your head and your heart said yes, because you mentioned your band members, so it was beyond just you.
Yeah, no, there was definitely some of my heart, because I wanted to see them again, play beautiful music again. So I was just not looking forward to travel for 2 days to get there, and travel a day back, and you know, health-wise, it's not the best thing. But yeah, I think that was a clear yes. And my manager, Tulsi Pillay, would have never allowed me to say no anyway.
Right.
She's the real boss. So.
Yeah.
That's when she calls and says, I've already said yes, but you think about it.
Yeah.
By the way, Tulsi, excellent work. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Awesome.
So far, so good. So, by the way, we're speaking about travel and the challenges of that and jet lag. Do you have any tips, that work for you for jet lag, for turning it around? Do you take supplements? Do you drink coffee? Do you do more yoga? Do you do less yoga? How do you maneuver through that kind of traveling?
Yeah, because often occasionally I get business class, but often I fly economy class on these long haul flights, and the trick is for me on those flights to sleep immediately when you get on the flight. So what I do is I sleep immediately, and then they bring the food, I eat that, and then I sleep immediately after that, because once you start watching movies and then it becomes like this long process and you can't fall asleep. And so I basically end up spending most of my flight sleeping. And if I don't sleep, I'm just lying there with my eye closed. And that seems to help a lot. When I get to the other side, I just try and get into the time zone as quickly as possible, immediately. And that's basically my tips. I'm lucky that I can sleep well. But even if I don't sleep well, I just rest.
You rest.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
that's a good tip.
It.
Hey, so before I get to closing questions, can you give a quick overview of your recording setup at home? You're still using the same mic and preamp that from New York?
Yes,
or have you...
the mic is still, it's the Gold Reference Manley mic, which is a beautiful mic for vocals and for flute, and then I've changed my preamp. I now use the Avalon preamp.
The 2 preamp.
Yeah,
I do as well. Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
And then I've got a benchmark. Sorry.
And do you use Pro Tools or Performer or Logic?
I use Logic just because my first album, the engineer used Logic, and I remember sitting there watching them edit my takes, and they did it very quickly. They said, "Okay, well, this is nicer here, and that's nicer there, and that's nicer there." And I go, "Oh no, but those few notes in that take was so beautiful. Can't you somehow bring it in?" And then he says, "No, And then I realized that the best person to edit would be myself.
Of course, right.
So I just went home and bought Logic and started learning immediately and started editing myself that day. And then I have analog to digital benchmark. It's the analog to converter that's got a very, very good clock on it. So that's basically my signal chain. And I kind of think in music, in music and engineering, you've got the feedback loop in common. If you try and send a rocket to the moon, you have to make sure the rocket is traveling straight up. So you have where you want the rocket to go, and then you see where the rocket's going, and you feed that back to the input, and you adjust as necessary. So that's in all engineering processes. You get that kind of feedback loop. And in music, I from an early on, I realized you have to know what you want to sound like, and then you have to know what you sound like.
Right.
So if you just play by yourself, a lot of musicians don't have a clear idea of what they want to sound like, especially when you start out. For a starting musician, it's important to listen and have someone that you want to imitate, and someone that you love, an idea of, but then when you practice, you actually, you don't really know what you sound like, because you hear it with your own ears. You don't know what you sound like out there, and because you're playing it, you kind of influenced, and you think you sound like a certain way, but you don't really, So that's why it's so important, even for a classical musician who's not even recording, to record themselves and to know what you sound like. And that whole feedback process, I find, is essential in the recording process as well. Because now I'll tell you this little story. In that first album, I had the flute. We recorded it, and I just used Logic's rooms and reverbs and delays. And when I got to Husky, he was like, no, we can't use Logic's. This is just not up to my standard. And he had his own beautiful reverbs that he wanted to add. But none of those reverbs worked. I mean, nothing worked. And I drove him crazy. I'm saying, well, this just doesn't work. Eventually, we had to pull in my wet files and use that, and then still didn't work. And then I realized he had EQ on his whole project, and we had to reverse that EQ on the Flute file. But then I couldn't understand, and he couldn't understand what was going on. Why was this so difficult? And then, like, I think the third album, we kind of figured it out, because what happens is when I play when I play my flute, I adapt to the room. So if it's a very reverby room, I play shorter. If it's a very bright room, I play duller. So and then when I edit for that room. So in other words, if I've done all the editing and playing in a certain room, and now we get to the final mixing stage, and the engineer puts his own room in there, it just doesn't work. That everything is done in that room. So basically, we realized from the third album on is that we decide on the room before we start the project.
It makes sense.
Yeah. And then when I record, I've got that room in my ear. When I edit, I've got that room in my ear. When he engineers, he's got the same room. And that magically solved all our problems.
That's a really interesting way of describing that collaborative process. I want to, Lisa, unless there's any other questions from the audience.
No, I don't see anything from anybody.
I'll start.
High fives, peace signs, and
claps.
And
by the way, we appreciate all of you joining us on Facebook Live, by the way, as well as Fireside. So let me start with my three closing questions. The first is, and when we finish these questions, you'll get closing thoughts, of course. So anything else you want to cover? First, since this show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally?
Well, professionally in the music world, for me, making it would be creating something beautiful. That's basically what drives me. If I've created something beautiful, and that's why I'm so obsessive with with my albums, because that's kind of the whole reason why I'm in there while I'm doing it. I just want to create something beautiful. And so for me, making it is to listen back to something and say, well, that's beautiful. That's making it. Personally, making it is being a loving person and kind of living the best life that you can live. Because I want to do both. I want to be a loving person, but also in my career and other things, I want to kind of work on the talents that I have and make them, create something beautiful with them. That's kind of part of making it for me personally.
Thank you. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
I think the first one is passion, to love what you do and to be passionate about it. And the second one is perseverance. It's so, my mom always, from we were little, she said, it's so much more important to be perseverant, to have grit than to have talent. So I think perseverance is really, that it could be, the 3 tips could be perseverance, perseverance, and perseverance. But
I would agree. I would agree.
But I would say a third tip would then be, in the music world, you have to really look at the big picture and include the business of music as part of what you need to do to get there.
Absolutely. My closing question is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self? I'm talking 8-year-old starting to learn the flute, Wouter Kellerman.
Oh, okay. I think when I was that young, I just didn't know if things were going to be okay. So I would just say you don't have to be in such a rush. Things are going to be okay. You can relax a little bit, because I've been always very passionate about things, and sometimes I rush. I get into things without really looking at the. That's a mistake I made when I'm younger. Is being so much in the moment without stepping back and looking at the big picture. So if I had to give myself as a young person advice, I would say every now and then step back and have a look at the big picture.
It's beautifully said. In having this really wonderful hour with you, which we never get to have because when we see each other, there are other people around and it's at an event. And although it's always lovely to see you, but one of the things that I'm really getting from this conversation is that the choices that you've made in your life and the intention in which you've gone about doing everything that you've done from a place of love and passion and commitment and focus and tenacity and and all of these beautiful things, they've really served you well. For somebody who essentially officially started your solo career at the age of 40, you have and continue to accomplish remarkable things with your music and with your life and being a dad and all of the things that you've done. And it's really a joy for me to watch you be acknowledged for that, not just to do it, but to get the accolades, because they're deserved, but not everybody who creates beautiful music and works really hard gets to do it. It's still a gift. It's an opportunity, one that you clearly do not take for granted. But it's still, it's just lovely to see. I applaud you and celebrate this life that you've created and that you're continuing to create, Wouter. It's just, I'd say so far so good.
Well, thank you so much, Terry, and I'm thank you. I mean, you're doing beautiful work with this podcast. It's just getting the message out there, and the important messages. And I can, we are on the same road.
Yeah.
Spreading good energy. That's the road we're both on. So thanks for doing that beautiful work.
I appreciate that.
Amazing.
And Lisa, by the way, you're part of that. Thank you for joining me on this part of the journey that we've been doing on Fireside together.
I thoroughly enjoy it. I've actually lost track of time on how many of these I've done. I just so look forward to them when I'm able to be here, and I miss it when I'm not. So thank you.
So Wouter, since this show's completely unedited, and is there is there anything on your heart or mind that you'd like to share or end this conversation with us and with our listeners?
Well, I think there's been a kind of a line throughout the conversation of being loving, but the other thing that we haven't touched upon is just an idea of playfulness, which I think makes life so much fun, and that's why I love games and I love dancing. Dancing, I think, is part of music. In Africa, for example, music and dance have always been one thing, not two separate things. But the whole, I think the whole idea of playfulness and bring, to be as part of lovingness, I think is brings so much fun into the world, and that's also important. So that's I think, basic. But I think that came out in the way we spoke and way we chatted. And
but I appreciate you pointing it out. I stand in agreement with you on that. The playfulness is whatever you do. It's not just music. I mean, clearly music, because we do play for a living. And sometimes we forget, the key word about what we do. But whatever you do in life, play, have fun with it, enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Fantastic.
Well, that's a beautiful note to end on. So I want to wish you the best with the Grammys. That has been slightly delayed because of COVID, but coming up soon. And congratulations again on the new beautiful record. We've already posted, Lisa has put up your website, but tell everybody where they can find you.
And they can just search for Wouter Kellerman. Wouter is with a W. And we have a very active YouTube channel with many beautiful videos. So that's a very good place to go and have a look for me. YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. Just search for my name and you'll find
Fantastic. Wouter, thank you so much for spending this time with Lisa and I today. And thank you to our live virtual audience. We appreciate you so much. And to everybody who's listening to the archive version of this conversation, on behalf of Wouter and Dr. Lisa and I, we thank you as well. And everybody stay safe, stay inspired, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much, Wouter. It's great to see you.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Terry. Thank you, Lisa.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.